Hello, everyone. This is Lynn Crawford from the Hope Dementia Support Groups. Happy New Year, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to Joshua Pops, who is a local elder law attorney. So Joshua decided to become a lawyer after spending time as a teacher in Los Angeles. After his time teaching, he knew that he wanted to continue to help others, but in a different way. He attended law school at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. Being an elder law attorney continues that good feeling for him. He gets to do something he's passionate about and work hard while also knowing that he is helping others in the process. And Joshua, it's all yours.
And there I am. Thank you, Lynn. Lynn gave you the facts, and I'd like to tell you all that I'm happy to give this presentation, which I've given a couple times. I am a local elder law attorney. I do a lot of Medicaid and dementia, Alzheimer's related work. In addition, I'm on the board of advisors for Hope, and my father has attended Hope as a group member. I will get into some of the circumstances I've dealt with my parents, my grandmother, those specific Medicaid related circumstances as we move forward, just so people have an idea of what I've dealt with and what I have done. Okay, why does it say the host has disabled screen sharing? Whoops, Julie, if you would.
You should be able to get in now.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Since I am not very technologically inclined. Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay, hold on, everyone. Sorry. Oh, I just updated my computer, so I'm sorry. This all worked fine earlier today. Sorry, Julie. Of course, and we even had a test run for this very idea. Okay, let me try this one more time. There we go. Okay, is my screen up now?
It's up.
Great. So as you see, I call this presentation Qualifying for Medicaid and the Middle Ages. It has nothing actually to do with the Middle Ages. I call it that because one of my mom's jobs, after she retired as a professor, she got a job somehow writing glossary definitions for a middle school history textbook. And she was a little behind on her work. And she called me up and said, "Josh, honey, I need you to define the Middle Ages for me in 120 words. And I thought, boy, you know, I could probably define it easily in 12 words. And I could probably define it easily in 12,000 words. But 120, that's really tough. That's why I call this Medicaid in the Middle Ages. It's like that. This is almost like a brief overview of Medicaid. It's almost just enough to kind of make us all feel a little confused without getting into the details, you know, that we really require. So I tell everyone, if you feel a little confused or don't have any idea what's going on, don't be afraid to ask a question. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. This is not easy stuff. A little background, and this is not in the slides, but when we're talking about Medicaid, we're talking about long-term care Medicaid. What we're talking about is paying for, traditionally, an adult family home, an assisted living facility, a skilled nursing facility, getting help to pay for those bills when we don't have the money to do so. Elder law itself really grew out of this Medicaid planning. If we'd have taken a time machine 30 years ago and looked in the phone book for an elder law attorney, we wouldn't find anything. This is very much a relatively new area of law. Medicaid was actually part of the Great Society program with LBJ in the 60s, and it was, putting it a little bluntly, welfare for old people. The idea was if you were in government subsidized housing, you had government subsidized benefits, the government would pay for your old age care as well. And in 1965, we just had no idea how long people would live and what those costs would be. And elder law grew out of that. So remembering the basics gives us an idea as we dig into these things of Medicaid was originally a program that would pay for care for people who had no money left and didn't have enough income to pay for it. That's still the basic structure that we're dealing with, but now we're dealing with regular lower class, regular middle class people, my family included, trying to figure out how to pay for some pretty substantial care costs. First of all, in order to qualify, in order to need those long-term care benefits, you need medical qualification. The official definition is substantial assistance with 2 or more of 7 specific areas of daily living: ambulation, bathing, feeding, transfer. Being completely honest, I've never had medical qualification be an issue. Theoretically, you could have a caregiver come in and give their assessment if you were worried or on the fence. But realistically, if you're looking for care for your loved one, and the vast majority, frankly, if you're 75 or 80 around there, you probably need some help with assistance with daily living more than you think you might. That's not really what you're coming to see an elder law attorney for. Financial qualifications. Now we're talking. The vast majority of my Medicaid work, when someone comes in and talks to me for a Medicaid consultation, married and single, probably 50-50. The vast majority are part of what's known as the Community Options Program entry system, everything other than skilled nursing. And if we're talking Alzheimer's and dementia, the vast majority, I'm talking probably close to 95%, if not more, of clients that I've dealt with are part of that assisted living adult family home, in-home, what's known as the Community Options Program. We are not as worried as people think about income. A lot of clients come to me and say, I'd like to apply for Medicaid for my wife, for my grandfather, but I'm told he makes too much money. The income qualifications are very high. Speaking bluntly, anyone whose gross income is in the range of under $6,500 a month, your income is low enough to qualify for Medicaid. Now, we'll get into what happens to your income once you're on Medicaid. But when we are looking at, do you qualify income-wise for Medicaid? The answer is you probably do. I generally know that someone's been hearing some horror stories and is probably coming in a little afraid if one of their concerns is that they make too much money for Medicaid. If you are, again, and this number has gone up, the numbers just came out, I didn't get a chance to update it today, but if you're single, if you're in the home, if you're in an adult family home or an assisted living facility, your income, and for married people, the same thing, the spouse who's going to need care, we're looking at $6,300, $6,500. I'm rarely concerned of, do you have too much income? Resources is what we're really looking at. When I'm looking at the income from married couples, and this is where being married comes in handy, we look at the income of the spouse who needs care. So again, I will use some relatively cliched examples, but ones that I think illustrate the points pretty well. If we'll call them an older fashioned traditional couple, if the husband worked outside of the home and was the quote unquote breadwinner, wife worked part-time occasionally, and husband has a pension and he has some Social Security income, but the wife needs care and her only income is, let's say, $750 a month in Social Security. That's her income. It doesn't matter if the two of them together make $10,000 a month. We only look at what's in the wife's name if we're looking for her care. I don't, being honest, see those big disparities in income as often as you'd think, but they still do come up. You still see a situation where one spouse has more income than the other. And this is also where that matters. Let's say it's, again, the other way around. And I tell you, these numbers, again, were just updated yet today, this morning, I believe. I got the new numbers, but they're relatively similar. Let's say it's the opposite, where the husband was the breadwinner and he made $5,000 a month. He'll need to go on Medicaid. His income will be going away. Wife will not be left with $750 a month in her name. No matter what the spouse out in the community makes, we can keep a portion, and I'll get into this and I'll be happy to answer questions and show hypotheticals because this can get confusing your first time hearing it. Long story short, no matter how little money the spouse remaining in the home makes, they will be able to keep a portion of their spouse's income. I generally tell clients, depending on how the numbers work out, $2,500 to $3,000 total. So if wife has $700 to her name, she will be able to keep up to $2,300 of her husband's income to pay for her expenses. We can't get money where there isn't there. So if there is a situation, rare as it may be, where the combined income of the spouses is under $3,000, we can't get money where it isn't there. But we can always keep whatever spouse is out in the community with more income than zero. Resources is what we're really talking about for Medicaid purposes. What can you have in your name? Bank accounts, retirement accounts, cars, boats, homes, jars of pennies, everything that we'd consider a resource. What are you allowed to keep? For a single person, $2,000 in non-exempt resources, and that's it. The exempt resources are a home, the major exempt resources, a home, a car, and a prepaid burial fund. Other than that, what you're allowed in the bank, what you're allowed to your name, $2,000. For a single person, we're not really doing a ton of major planning. I still have a lot of single person consultations, so we can talk about timing and what to do with certain things as if there's any issues. But realistically, for a single person, we are waiting until their money's gone. And then if they're still alive, we switch to Medicaid. I always use the example of my grandma, who lived to 105, unfortunately for us, because nobody liked grandma. Grandma lived to 105. You don't think you'll live that long. Healthy or not, at a certain point, you're going to need full-time care. Grandma had her house, she had her car, she had her pension from NBC Radio. But eventually, her care needs were great. And eventually, we had to sell that house, move her into a smaller apartment, have someone come in and help her a few days a week. Eventually, even that wasn't enough, and we had to move grandma to assisted living. Well, we had, make up a number. Grandma sold the house and had $400,000 left. Well, grandma spent that money. Once she was under $2,000, she switched over to Medicaid at the age of 99, I believe. And from 99 to 105, the government paid the bill for her assisted living. That's how it works for single people. Again, putting it brusquely, because we're talking about our loved ones' lives here, usually for a single person, we're selling the home, we're selling, we're liquidating assets, we're making things easy on ourselves. And if the person passes away and they still have money, okay, we'll distribute money to beneficiaries. And if the person outlives their money, well, thank goodness these government programs are there to help us pay for those programs. Now, if you're married, this is the big one. And this is a number I will say has changed. The major number to look into is that third number. If you're married, you're in the home, and your spouse is either getting in-home Medicaid or is in an adult family home or an assisted living facility, the new number, I will tell you, is $58,075. You can have a home, a car, a prepaid burial fund, and up to $58,075. That could be money in the bank. You could have $58,075 in cars. You could have $58,075 in jars of pennies. Doesn't matter how it is, but that's what you're allowed to keep that's exempt. Now, the good news is this is what's called a snapshot approach. What that means is we take a picture of the date you apply of your resources. So you don't have to stay broke, for lack of a better term. The best way it was described to me early on in my career is qualifying, getting your spouse qualified for Medicaid is a limbo contest. You have to get under that bar, but you don't have to stay under. Again, the home, and this is important, so long as the person or representative can state an intent to return home. That's always subjective. If someone has Alzheimer's to the point where they're unable to care for themselves entirely, or to the point where they're unable to speak, if their son or daughter, their personal rep, their power of attorney, whoever can say, mom would have liked to go back to her home one day, then the home is exempt. We can have that car that's exempt. Household furnishings and personal effects are exempt. The way I put it is, if it's something you'd have to look up the value of, we might want to look at it. If it's something you stick a price tag on at a garage sale, we don't worry about it. Life insurance with a cash value. So any, large payout, you can't cash it out at the time. Life insurance is exempt. And a Medicaid compliant annuity which I will get into, which is something we use for spouses to sometimes try and save some money, a Medicaid compliant annuity, which I will get into. Now, you're thinking, well, I have a home, I have a car, and I have $250,000. Why don't I just give the money away to my kids? Then I won't have any money left. Needless to say, we have closed that loophole. There is what's called, and people hear this term without really knowing what it means, it's a 5-year look back period. From the date you apply, 60 days before that date, the question is, have you transferred any money for less than fair market value? If you've given someone cash, that's a gift. If you sold somebody a $50,000 car for $2,000, that's a gift. It's less than fair market value. That penalty period, and here's the tricky part, is it begins when that person would have otherwise qualified. So let's say you gave away $50,000. Once if you're single, if you give money away, the penalty period starts when you would otherwise qualify, meaning when you're at $2,000, okay, that's when you're ineligible for a certain amount of time. And a lot of people come to me and they're concerned if I gave money away previously, something or other, this or then. There's no penalty for gifting. There's a penalty for keeping the gift. If someone gave $50,000 away, just return the $50,000, no longer a gift. What people get caught up on a lot of times is what it really means in terms of size of gift. Giving people birthday gifts every year, taking them out for dinner, that's not a transfer penalty. Now if you take them out for a $5,000 meal in Las Vegas, now we're starting to get in a little trouble. I generally say pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. You can still buy people's meals, you can still take them out for their birthday, give them a check for their birthday, but we're not looking to transfer large amounts. And that includes, people ask often, they've heard that you can give away $15,000. That's completely unrelated to Medicaid. That's a tax thing. So if you've given $15,000 away every year, that's a Medicaid gift. We're going to have to undo that. If it happened more than 5 years ago, doesn't matter. The application says, have you transferred anything in the last 60 months? And if 60 months and 1 day before you apply for Medicaid, you gave away $1 million, you check the box that says no, and you move on. Whoops, there it is. So 5 years ago, doesn't matter. That total of all gifts, what I'm really talking about with clients there is make sure that you're, if you are giving money away for people's birthdays and taking them out, things like that. Now, here is something that comes up often, and it's gotten trickier through the years. The transfer of a home to a spouse, that's always exempt. We can always keep the home. So I always tell this to clients, this is for a married couple. If husband's in a facility and wife is staying at home, the wife will not be kicked out of the house. That's exempt. We can transfer the house to the wife's name. There's no issue, it's her home now. A disabled child, a child under 21, and here's an issue that comes up a lot. A child who has lived in the home for 2 years, who has provided verifiable care. The main thing there is basically a kid who lived with mom or dad, and lived with, not nearby or went by often, lived with mom or dad. And they lived in the home for at least 2 years before mom or dad applied for Medicaid. Now, this loophole has been closing based on the way the state interprets a few things here. So I often tell clients that this is helpful if you are using in-home Medicaid, if someone is applying for the state and having someone come into the home to care for them. But usually if you've moved to an adult family home or an assisted living facility, the caregiver child exception isn't going to apply, and we probably won't be able to keep the house. Know that if you're trying to say the transfer wasn't, to avoid a state recovery, wasn't qualified for Medicaid, the state has really come down hard on those. So if you, have given away, let's say have a child who had some money trouble, needed help with a divorce, even if you didn't know Medicaid was in the pipeline, if it was a gift, if it was a transfer, a gift is a gift is a gift at that point. So I'm often having clients look at, okay, sometimes down to the penny of exactly how much money have you provided to loved ones? How much money have you given to kids? Have you given to loved ones? What's out there? That's something that comes up a lot. The major thing I tell clients, especially with the home, is and this is a general rule of thumb, for a single person, it's usually best to just sell the home, as I said, like with grandma, put all the money in one account, see how long their money lasts. With a married couple, what we're often doing, almost always, is again, if husband's going into a facility, if husband needs care, we are using a power of attorney to transfer the home from husband and wife to just wife. We're allowed to do that. There's unlimited transfers between spouses, and we'll get into in a minute. And now, no matter what happens with husband, wife will always be able to stay in the home. She'll never have to sell it, and the state will never have a lien against it. So here's how that comes up. The state has a right to receive funds based on the care provided. However long someone was on Medicaid, that tab is running. So what we're looking to do in that situation, because we don't want the state to recover a portion of the home, is this. Recovery is against the estate of the person who received Medicaid. That's a term of art. So what that really means is an estate in the legal sense. If it's in your name, it's in your estate. If it's not in your name, it's not in your estate. So again, right here, if the home is owned by a husband and wife, and the husband goes into a nursing home, we transfer that home to the wife. When husband passes away, the home's not in his estate, and there's no recovery from a wife who didn't receive any care. And this, again, this is why it comes up here. If you're single and you can't show an intent to return home, a lien attaches during their lifetime. And if they can express an intent to return home, that lien attaches after they pass away. So it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And if we're going to need that money to pay for their care and try and get the best care we can for that person, it almost always makes sense to sell the home. Especially, and I tell clients, and this is the important thing, and do we get to this? No, we do not. So I will get to this outside of my basic slides here. Once someone is on Medicaid, so let's say it's, again, a single person. This is not in the slide, but it's important to know. Someone's on Medicaid. They will be contributing their income towards the cost of their care. I, again, use the generic grandma because of what we did with my grandma, where grandma eventually went on Medicaid, and grandma was allowed to keep her personal needs allowance. She kept, at the time, a grand total of $62 a month in her name. That's it. Now it's up to 70 whole dollars. That's it. There are no, other than your health insurance, your money is going towards the cost of your care. If grandma is going to be on Medicaid and she's only going to keep $70 a month, and the state's going to have a lien against her home at some point, it makes sense to sell it, because even with only $70 a month, if we don't sell that home, we can't have a renter, because if the home is still in grandma's name, that income is rental income, and she wouldn't be able to keep it. And in the meantime, we'd still have to pay property taxes, and we'd still have to pay insurance, and we'd still have to pay the utilities, and we'd still have to pay maintenance. And it really just eventually becomes a sunk cost. In the vast majority of cases, when it comes to that house, we are selling the home, because that person can only keep $70. And something that comes up occasionally is, what about married couples where both parties go on Medicaid? I give the example of, and here's where I'm getting into my parents' situation. My parents were living with my wife and I. My mom got her Alzheimer's diagnosis, closing in on 3 years now. Seems like it's been a lot longer. It's actually been less than 3 years. They were living with us, and it was clear that they needed a little more structure, for lack of a better term. So mom and dad moved into independent living. And independent living worked for a little while. Eventually, we needed someone to come in and help dad out with mom. That got to be too much, so we tried assisted living. And in assisted living, dad did well, but assisted living wasn't really able to provide the level of care that mom needed. And so we made the tough decision, but it ended up being the right decision. Dad stayed in assisted living and mom moved to a local adult family home 7 minutes away, luckily for us. Dad's bill is $4,900 a month and it's about to go up. I'm about to get the cost of living increase. Mom's bill is $5,200 a month. Needless to say, they did well, they were okay, but they don't have $10,000 worth of money to blow every month and have anything left. So eventually, and this is coming, I believe, in about a year now, 11 months, give or take, I'm going to apply for Medicaid for both of them. Dad in his assisted living facility, mom in her adult family home. They will each be able to have $2,000 in their name, and they will each keep $70. Do I wish things had gone differently? Of course, but as my dad would have said, that's showbiz. Whoops. Now, this is the major thing, and this is why I'm always glad when clients come to me with a little more time in advance. This, for COPES, assisted living, adult family home, in-home care, your coverage is approved, your coverage kicks in the date you're approved, not the date you apply. So if a client comes to me and says, I heard that grandma could only have $2,000 in her name. Well, grandma's at $1,000. I'd like to apply for Medicaid. The answer is okay, but we better hurry up because it takes about 45 to 60 days for those, for those Medicaid applications to go through, and you're going to be stuck with the tab in the meantime. So I usually tell clients 45 to 60 days before you're going to be at that resource limit. Come in and see me. That way we know exactly that application is ready to go. When I'm submitting an application on behalf of a client with my cover letter, I'm telling the caseworker who's reviewing the application of, listen, I know this person is above the resource limit now. Don't worry, we will be below that resource limit once you're ready to approve this application. Now, it has occasionally happened where an application, it happened a couple times, gone through much quicker than we thought. I can think of one offhand where the client called me up and said, this was a Friday, and the client said, I talked with the caseworker, and if I don't have $4,000 gone by Monday, I'm going to have to wait another month because they're ready to approve benefits. And we brainstormed. And the first thing I always tell clients to do is if you have a little bit of money to burn, buy a new mattress. You can get a Casper or one of those. You click the button, there's $950 gone. You spend a third of your life in bed, if you're lucky. Buy a mattress, you deserve it. People don't buy mattresses enough. We immediately bought some new blinds for the windows, and we spent money to have someone repair some cracks in the driveway and weed it and basically redo the driveway. Voila, $4,000 spent. Another thing I'm often looking at is if we have to get that application in quickly and, we have money to burn. Besides those things, I tell clients, as you see here, we can't give money away. You can't give money. You can't transfer money to kids, but you can blow money, your own money, in any way you want. There was a famous story I was told by a former caseworker who's now the regional director of single guy who was on Medicaid, and he called up his caseworker and said, I received $14,000 in an inheritance this month, but don't worry, it's gone. And this caseworker said, what'd you spend the money on? And his answer was wine, women, and song. Well, it's your America, whatever you want to spend the money on. We can always spend money, or for the married couple, on the person in the home. We just can't give that money away. So if someone's coming to me and it's, we want to qualify for Medicaid right away, and this is that timing, and let's say we're $25,000 over the resource limit, you can buy a new car in that scenario. You can put money into the home. You can spend money on yourself. You just can't give it away. That's a matter of timing. So I don't want clients coming to me when they're broke. I want clients coming to me when they know they're going to need Medicaid and they have an idea when, and now we want to start figuring out how to preserve those assets. And now, here's another wrinkle in terms of timing and when I have clients coming in. Some adult family homes, pretty good amount. Almost every assisted living facility, larger memory care facility, their contract, unrelated to Medicaid, this is just how it works with them. They require you to pay out of pocket for 2 years. So the idea is let's say again, like I've got mom's bill. I'm lucky that I say lucky that her adult family home is only $5,200. I have an agreement that I am paying out of pocket. The agreement I reached with this adult family home was 17 months. For 17 months, I'm going to pay out of pocket. And after 17 months, she'll accept mom as a Medicaid client. Completely unrelated to the state's rules, completely unrelated to any 5-year look back or anything like that. You sign a contract, and this agreement is, I'll pay you this amount out of pocket, and then you'll let me go on Medicaid. Here's another reason why I'm having clients come in and talk to me. If someone went into an assisted living facility and they signed a contract, they'll pay for 2 years, and the bill is, let's make up again with mom's number, $5,200. So that's actually on the low end. And it's for, again, grandma, and grandma has $40,000 to her name. Well, we want to look at getting grandma out of there. We're going to have to pay for 2 years. And if we don't have 2 years worth of money to pay, we're going to have to find another place for grandma there. I tell clients in terms of timing when to apply that 45 to 60-day rule, great. But a lot of times I'm having clients come in a year in advance, 2 years in advance when they've signed that 2-year contract, 5 years in advance, figuring out if there's any money we can save, if we can do anything. Occasionally I tell a client, I have a client come in who, they've just retired and they've heard about Medicaid and they'd like to know if it applies to them. I usually tell people, I'm not able to work on the timing. I'm not able to figure out when we're doing things without what I call, and this is a nice way of putting it, a precipitating event. That's that Alzheimer's diagnosis. That's that stroke, the heart attack, those sorts of grim things. The reason being, now we know when this person will be on Medicaid. I again use the example of my grandma. We didn't know when grandma would be on Medicaid until she moved into that assisted living facility and started paying a large amount of money every month. We wouldn't have known and been able to do any planning or figuring out, or wouldn't have been worth doing anything until grandma went into that facility. I usually have clients coming to see me, who've come from Hope. It's usually when they're at the point where their husband or wife is at home and they've tried their best and it's clear that they just won't be able to look after them anymore in the home. I have, I refer them to placement advisors, people who help them find places to stay, places to live. And once they're at that place, now it's, then they call me back of, okay, I found a place for my wife. She has to pay out of pocket for a year. Here's how much it costs. What do I do with the rest of my money? When do we apply? That's a good Medicaid consultation. And another thing that we're talking about because of that 2 years, and this is the big thing, this isn't on the slide, but this is the vast majority of my consultations. There's no right place for every person that's the same. There's no right situation. I'm usually telling a client when they come to see me, when they need to move their spouse, of talk to a placement advisor, take the burden off yourself. Try, I know this is easier said than done. Try not to think about the money. Try to think balancing out the financial burden with the emotional burden. You want your loved one to be somewhere where they're happy, not somewhere where you think is cheap enough. The vast majority of my Medicaid consultations here are after someone's been placed, after they've called that placement advisor, their husband or wife or mom or dad is in an adult family home or assisted living facility. And I'm just making up a case scenario here of a wife places her husband and she'll have to pay out of pocket for 2 years. And based on their income and based on her expenses and based on her husband's cost of care, we have an idea, I call it, guesstimating to the penny. Based on his care, we have an idea 2 years from now, after she signed that 2-year contract, how much money she'll have left in her name. And let's say in 2 years, she'll have $300,000 to her name. Well, we don't want to just spend all that money until it's down to $58,075. We always want to look at other options. we can do a few things. In those scenarios, the first option we always look at, because a home is exempt, is do you have a mortgage to pay off, or are there repairs that need to be done? The home is always exempt no matter the amount. So if we're going to be over that $58,075 limit, we can always pay off a mortgage. We can always do repairs. If mom and dad's house or husband and wife's house, if they've been needing, a new kitchen, if they've needed to fix things for forever, that's always our first option. Redoing the deck, redoing the kitchen, painting the house, anything that will increase the value, because money we've put into the home is always exempt. This is for the married couple that we're really talking about. A, that money is always exempt in the home, and B, now it's increased the value. If husband or wife chooses to sell the home down the road, they can hold on to that money and basically have taken care of themselves for a lot more often, a lot longer. The other thing we're looking at, and this is something that people ask about a lot, but I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on it, is a Medicaid compliant annuity. So the idea, very briefly, is this, and it's for a married couple. And I'll again say husband is going into a facility. Again, we only look at husband's income. We only look at how much money the husband is going to make, how much he makes. Wife's income doesn't matter at all. If they have, let's make up a number. If husband's ready to apply for Medicaid, he's paid out of pocket, and they have $158,000 to their name, home's paid off, no repairs needed, we're just sitting on $100,000 and we don't want to waste it. We could take that $100,000 and put it in a Medicaid compliant annuity. It turns that money into a guaranteed income stream for the wife, where she gets a check every month for 5 years. Because that check's in her name and it's no longer money in the bank, it's now income to her, it doesn't count for Medicaid purposes. It's not a great investment. You only end up with, I'd say, about 60 cents on the dollar, give or take. So when all's said and done, from that $100,000 that we put into the annuity, the wife may only get $60,000. But that's $60,000 more than zero. A lot of times when I'm telling clients in these Medicaid consultations, things like annuities, paying off the home, is Medicaid planning is kind of like the world's most morbid horse race. You can never guarantee which horse is going to come in. And based on the risk, and based on, for lack of a better term, how lucky you feel, that helps us determine what course of action we want to take. So Medicaid consultations with excess resources, it's not just one and done. We're often going through a process where I'm meeting with this client a few times throughout that period, determining the best course of action to take. One thing I have noticed, as I said, the assisted living facilities generally require 2 years of private pay. Adult family homes will often require less. Just personally, I've found that those smaller adult family homes, privately run facilities with 4 to 6 patients, for Alzheimer's and dementia, I found that individualized care just tends to be better. I wasn't sure it would be a good fit for my mom. And mom is in a great adult family home. Not only is it a great facility, but the woman who runs it can cut mom's hair, so her hair always looks great. Mom has that individual care where I know in the morning, Leah's the name of my mom's caregiver. I know Leah will wake mom up and help mom to the bathroom and make sure that she's dressed for the day, and wheel her out to the main dining area for breakfast, and mom will get a healthy snack and she'll look after mom. That individualized care has helped a lot. Mom was in her, house coat, for lack of a better term, for a while there over the summer. In assisted living, they just aren't able to offer that individualized care, and it was taking its toll on mom, and more especially on dad. For that reason, I generally think take a look at adult family homes. Those small individually run facilities are pretty good. This is not on my presentation. I have a separate presentation I give to lawyers that gets into the nitty-gritty of Medicaid and divorce. I'm not going to open that one because it has a little too much jargon, for lack of a better term. It's because I provide it to lawyers and professionals. It's written with a little bit more mumbo jumbo. But people often hear about Medicaid and a divorce. So the idea is this: we count the resources of the husband and the wife for a Medicaid application. But if you get divorced, well, then you've divorced. So if you have a situation where you put all the money in the wife's name, have her get divorced from her husband, put almost nothing in his name, now he doesn't have resources, he can qualify for Medicaid sooner. We don't have to spend their money. Well, there's a couple things. First of all, you have to well and truly get divorced. I have seen some people out there get a legal separation thinking that helps. If you get a legal separation, you're still married. You are not divorced, you are still married. Doesn't matter how far you went through with it for the Medicaid application, nothing has changed. Second of all, because we can put money into the home, because we can spend money on a Medicaid compliant annuity, because we can spend excess resources on the well spouse, divorce is not our only option. We don't have to do it. There's other ways to preserve money. Third of all, and this happened early in my career, when I was doing Medicaid applications, I had exactly 2 clients early on who said, let's get a Medicaid divorce. And I said, okay, let's do it. I drafted the paperwork and I had that petition for divorce. And they looked at the piece of paper where they had to sign where it said the marriage is irretrievably broken, and they couldn't do it. Both of them independently put the pen down and said, I want to do something else. A Medicaid divorce isn't just a rubber stamp. I mean, you're separating from this person. You're getting divorced. If you've been married 30 years, 40 years, my parents are, at 49, I wouldn't want them to get divorced to see if I could save a few bucks. I wouldn't want to do that. It's there. It occasionally works, but it's almost rarely is it the right option. The only time I've recommended it is in a scenario like this where a woman came in, a wife, hypothetical woman comes into the office and says that her husband needs a pretty significant level of care. They were high school sweethearts, reconnected later in life. Typical story. And he convinced her to marry him, and she said, okay. And now he needs care. And she had about $900,000 when they got married, and he had about $50,000 when they got married. Well, they'd only been married a couple years. At that point, divorce made sense. That spouse ended up passing away before we got started on the Medicaid divorce, but that's where it makes sense. If it's a relatively recent marriage, if there's a large disparity of assets, then let's look at a divorce. I don't want to divorce people just to save a buck. Again, I've drafted 2 divorce petitions related to Medicaid. Neither client ended up signing. And again, my personal experience, mom and dad, 49 years. I don't want my mom to have to go back to her maiden name after 49 years just so I could have saved a little bit of money. I'm willing to spend. Another thing that has come up, and I use this example with my parents, of it's very easy when spouses come to see me, when people come to see me, they've talked about, well, I think I might need to move mom down the road, or I think I might need to move my husband or wife, things like that. It's easy to go, the way I put it is, and I say this to clients all the time, it's very easy. It's human nature to go down with the ship, to be a martyr for the cause. I always tell clients, you don't get a medal for being a martyr. You don't get a ribbon for going down with the ship. But it's very easy to think you're doing the right thing, keeping a loved one in the home rather than moving them into an adult family home or into an assisted living facility. And you're providing substandard care, and your life is going to pieces. And this was, over 2 years ago now, when it was clear something was wrong with my mom. And my wife brought up moving them into independent living and bringing someone in to help them. And I immediately shot her down angrily. And she paused and said, you realize you're doing everything you tell a client not to do. that was my kind of moment of clarity. For Medicaid, if you have a spouse in the home, if you have a loved one in the home, and you're worried about Medicaid, but you're going down with the ship, that's a good time to see an attorney so we can talk about what it actually looks like when you move them, so that you can have information and feel comfortable to move them. Because that's usually, unfortunately, in my opinion, again, one man's subjective opinion, the right option. We didn't even, I'm so bad at following my own advice. We didn't even independently come to the decision to separate my mom and dad. Assisted living called me up, the director, and basically said, "You got to move your mom. We can't care for her anymore." And that was midsummer, and it took about 6 weeks, and those were the pretty close to the 6 worst weeks of my life, because I felt like I had no choice, and it was tough. And it was, of all things, my parents' exact 49th wedding anniversary was the date Dad moved into his new studio apartment in assisted living, and Mom moved into her adult family home. And of course, after that, things actually really improved. Dad, who was caring for Mom, has gotten a lot better. He isn't just sitting there watching her go downhill helplessly while basically dragging himself down with him. And of course, I should have known that doing this for a living, but I didn't. It was easier to say I want to keep Mom and Dad together, and it was easier to suffer. I generally tell clients, if you're looking at Medicaid, you're not doing anyone a service by keeping them in the home for as long as possible. Caregivers are there, government programs are there to care for them, to look after them. There are ways to make numbers work. Not always. I tell clients sometimes my advice isn't what they wanted to hear, but sometimes just knowing what's actually going to happen can be helpful. I think it's easy for people to avoid the problem. It's easy to be an ostrich when it comes to Medicaid, when it comes to placing Mom or placing your husband, and not getting actual advice and just kind of hearing about what a friend of a friend said or what you read on the internet. And I think there's a benefit to, well, that's not how the program works. You got wrong information. So now what? At the very least, it's worth coming in. And sometimes the answer is there's nothing we can do. And now let's look at placement and getting them comfortable. But Medicaid, paying for care, when you have that $5,000 bill, figuring out how much you're going to have to pay, will you be able to pay it? There's always, it's always worth sitting and talking and seeing what we can figure out. Keeping them at the home for as long as possible to try and save money is never a good idea. As everyone learns in their Hope group, it's very easy for that caregiver spouse to go downhill so fast that they pass away before the ill spouse. There are protections we do for that, by the way, as well. I have a lot of clients from Hope who've come in and had their wills rewritten. There are ways to protect, the well spouse if they pass away before the ill spouse, to protect the estate. But I always tell clients, moving someone sooner than you think you're ready is always a better option, even if it ends up costing you more money, because it's worth saving for yourself. I know this one was usually questions, and I end up getting peppered with questions, and I'm sure I'll get peppered with individual questions this time. Julie, I know it's 7:19. We have 11 minutes left, but I'd like time to get into individual questions. I've always enjoyed that kind of, it's hard to work the room when it's just me staring at myself in a computer screen. Boy, is that difficult. But I'd be happy to, and I'm hoping we have lots of individual questions. Every time, by the way, every time I've given this presentation, someone has asked me a question that I hear for the first time, and my answer is, I have no idea. So I'm always looking forward to what that question will be this time. Lynn, Julie, do we have a large list of questions?
We have quite a list of questions.
I figured
So
we did.
my very first question is, what about if your loved one lives in a home that won't take Medicaid at all? What happens when they run out of money?
Now you're scrambling. Now you're scrambling or paying out of your own pocket. If you're at a facility that doesn't accept Medicaid, every time you write a check, you're throwing money away that you might need to pay for another home. I recommend to people, there's very fancy places in town that have a lot of bells and whistles that don't accept Medicaid. And great, you're paying for a lot of bells and whistles, but you're also throwing money away every month. The answer, unfortunately, is move.
So can they just throw them out?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I had a situation once with a professional guardian for someone who I said this, I was talking with this person. I said this, this incapacitated person, they're at an assisted living facility, so we need 2 years of money. And he said, well, I have a great idea. I have a way we're going to save money. And I said, how? He said, well, let's just apply for Medicaid now. What are they going to do? And I said, the answer is show you the contract you signed and evict you. Yes, they can evict you. They are under no obligation to, if they don't have a Medicaid contract, A, they wouldn't even have, the right tools in place to put you on the program and receive the benefits. And B, yeah, they can throw you out. You signed a contract. That's another one of those ostrich things of don't put your head in the sand and think, oh, I'll see what happens when I run out of money.
And do they typically, is there a rule that says that they cannot evict you without giving you a 30-day notice?
Yes, usually. But again, if you're at the point where it's a question of, eviction or not, we don't want to get that far. I mean, we want to have more money than just we're about to go broke and now they're throwing us out.
Got it.
Yeah.
So is VA disability income counted?
So VA disability income can help pay for care, but it is counted as income if we need Medicaid. So VA aid and attendance often comes up. VA aid and attendance is its own special beast. And there's an attorney friend of mine who I refer for every state to handle VA benefits. But aid and attendance, basically, if you have the cost of assisted living and you served in a specific wartime period, you can get up to, give or take, $1,800 a month to supplement your care. That can often help stretch our money out or things like that. But generally, income is income is income. Income counts toward the cost of our care.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Is a 401k balance exempt or non-exempt when applying for Medicaid? For example,
go ahead.
A married couple, the 401k was earned by the spouse, not going into assisted care. Excuse me.
And that's like one of the number one reasons why I always give that kind of Great Society LBJ background on Medicaid program, because the answer is that counts. And again, the idea is if we're going to be using taxpayer funds to pay for your care, you have to make every effort to use your available resources. And even if there's a penalty to take money out of that 401k, well, take the money out, let us know how much is left. In those situations, we are often looking at, those are a frequent usage of Medicaid compliant annuities, because often we can roll a 401k or an IRA over into an annuity without losing some of those tax benefits, not always. And I often refer those to a financial advisor. But if the well spouse, if the wife out there has 300 grand in a 401k, that counts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is long-term care insurance counted?
So long-term care insurance is not counted. If you're lucky enough that you have a long-term care insurance policy that's paying a large amount, great, that'll stretch it out for a while. If it has a cash value, which I don't know of any long-term care insurance that does, that would count. But no, long-term care insurance is, I'm on the fence. I have plenty of clients who've been very happy with their long-term care insurance, but I've also have plenty of clients who've been in for some kind of rude awakenings where the policy doesn't cover what they thought they would cover. And the way it's written, it really doesn't give them what they thought they had.
Would you recommend long-term care insurance?
I don't want to say no, but probably no. Let me put it this way. I'm not going to look at paying for long-term care insurance for myself. When I say Medicaid planning is the world's most morbid horse race, the costs of long-term care are so exorbitant now that those premiums are just awful high. And, in that morbid horse race analogy, I'm just going to let it ride and hope I get lucky.
So you mentioned COPES several times. What is COPES?
COPES is the version of Medicaid that pays for care in an assisted living facility, an adult family home, or in the home. It separates, so years and years ago, a lot more Medicaid was through skilled nursing facilities. But as people needed more help, that was Alzheimer's, dementia, just general slowing down and not these serious, debilitating short-term medical issues, the state separated out skilled nursing from these help out programs. So when I say COPES, it's a little bit of jargon, but what it really means is if you're not in a serious medical situation, these are the rules we're dealing with. Macho. The perils of, Zoom calls.
Yeah. Will Medicaid pay for long-term care if one has dementia, or does it matter what they're diagnosed with?
Does not matter the diagnosis. Medicaid, if you have a loved one with dementia and you have to move them into an adult family home, and that adult family home will accept you as a Medicaid patient, then you can apply for Medicaid.
So if my dad is receiving Social Security and Medicare, but he lives alone, if I decide to move in with him, will it affect him?
Well, and see, that's a question of affect how. Is this person already on Medicaid? That I don't.
Okay.
And again, the caregiver child exception don't work as well as people think they do. So I generally tell clients, be careful with that sort of thing. If you're moving in with a parent, that we want to look at that carefully and figure out if that's something that's going to work or not. Because we don't want that caregiver child to rely on mom or dad transferring the home to them when it's not going to work.
So how do you apply for Medicaid before you need it?
You don't.
How would you recommend thinking about the timing?
I wish there was a better way to say it. I'm not saying this in a sales pitchy way, but come talk to me. You do not apply for Medicaid in advance. And I know this happens a lot. It happens all the time. I get this where at a rehab facility or at the hospital, someone says that a social worker told them, Dad's going to need Medicaid, so we need to apply now. And I tell them, well, the resource limit's $2,000. How much money does Dad have? $100,000. Well, then you're going to get denied. There's no prospective application.
You're right. That is what
happens all the time in rehab, especially rehab.
Yeah.
All the time of, well, you're going to be checking mom or dad out soon, so go ahead and apply for Medicaid now. Then the client gets denied. They have no idea what this means. They are sent a denial letter that they couldn't understand if their life depended on it, and now they're burned by the whole process.
Yeah.
It happens. I see it all the time.
How hard is it to find a care home that will accept Medicaid?
I think Clark County is really good. I think we have a wealth of adult family homes and a large number of assisted living facilities. It all depends on how lucky you feel. Like I told everyone, my mom is 7 minutes away from Dad, 7 minutes, and the woman who is mom's caregiver does hair. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better situation. It was the second place we looked at, and I kind of thought, why would I keep digging when we struck oil? And I signed a contract, and Mom was there at the beginning of that next month. It depends on how you feel. It depends on how lucky you get. That was the first piece of good luck, I'd had with my parents in about 3 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you run out of money and are evicted, then where do you live? Can you move into a Medicaid home with no buy down time?
You're limiting your options there is the thing. Money gives you options. If you're looking for a place that'll accept someone as a Medicaid client right away, your options are limited, because if somebody says we need 3 months or 6 months or 2 years, that's not an option for you anymore. So you've really, you've really narrowed down your options to now you've really got to get lucky.
If your loved one with dementia is listed as a beneficiary and eventually receives the amount while on Medicaid, will Medicaid take the amount received?
They will have to go off Medicaid for that period of time. What we are often doing with married couples is we can redraft. So again, using the husband and wife scenario, I had one of these yesterday with someone from home. If wife is in a facility and husband is well, we are drafting a special will. And this is the one time we're allowed to use trusts with a special trust called a testamentary special needs trust. We transfer the home into just husband's name. And husband's will doesn't say, I leave everything to wife. It says, I leave everything to wife's special needs trust. If husband passes away first, wife doesn't inherit his estate now. Her trust inherits the estate, and she doesn't have to spend that money. For spouses, we can do that. If you have a loved one with dementia and they're the beneficiary in someone else's will, take them out of the will. I had a client who was on Medicaid. Client's mother was 97. We had no idea that her brother in Arkansas left her $50,000 in his will, and we had no choice. We had to take the money. We had to go off Medicaid and spend it and go back on. So we're doing some estate planning to work around that beneficiary issue. But if they're the beneficiary and they're on Medicaid, they are obligated to accept that money. They can't say, oh, I'm on Medicaid. Go give it to somebody else.
So how do I find a legal elder care professional in my area?
Call me, and if you don't like me, I'll give you a couple other names. I guess would be the idea in terms of the Medicaid and estate planning part. So I don't know what they mean by elder care professional. That could be so many things.
Okay. I guess I would ask that person to clarify what she's thinking about.
Yeah. What do we need help with?
So, and then here is a thought. Have you considered seeking asset preservation prior to a need for an application to prevent denial in the future and to protect from needless spend down later?
Oh, yes. We can, there's occasionally, because we have that 5-year look back. This is not something I do all the time, but it is something I do. Again, this requires this scenario. If we have a loved one who's is in a facility, we have, for lack of a more gentle term, we have enough money to burn that even after paying for 5 years of their care, we'll have money left over. We can now look at giving that excess money away 5 years in advance of an application. I don't like getting too deep into the weeds in that scenario because I've noticed the more I explain it, the more confused clients get by other things. So I try and avoid it unless it's absolutely necessary. But yeah, sometimes there isn't a great answer other than let's look at avoiding spending more money than we have to. But sometimes we can save money, certainly.
Let's see. So what if a facility allows private pay for 3 years and then will accept Medicaid for assisted living? What happens if memory care is needed and the same facility won't accept Medicaid for that type of care?
I ran into this, again, goes back to my parents. The place my mom was at, they accept Medicaid for assisted living, but not memory care. And as I said, my luck eventually turned around, but I took the risk. I made the bet when my parents moved in that my mom wouldn't get bad enough to the point that she would need memory care. And sure enough, in less than 2 years, she did. And because I couldn't afford to pay for memory care privately, I had to move mom. Again, Medicaid planning is the world's most morbid horse race. And if you're paying for assisted living where they accept Medicaid and you're willing to put money on the bet that your loved one won't need memory care, keep them there. But sometimes, despite your best efforts, you bet your money and you lose. When I was told that my mom had to move, that's kind of how I felt of, well, what are you going to do? Sometimes you just put your money on the horse you think's going to come in and you lose.
So my mom currently lives at home with 24/7 caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
She has $100,000 that I'm spending down. How much do I leave to guarantee she will get Medicaid and still have enough to get into a facility?
And the answer is, why not start looking now? Why not get information? In this area, information is power. Depending on how long that $100,000 will be spent, if mom needs 24/7 care, again, why not look now and get mom comfortable and set up now? Why avoid the issue?
So going back to the lady that asked the question about being able to have someone provide a legal elder care professional. So she's not sure about what the actual title is, but she needs to talk to someone to find out how to plan her husband's care. He has Alzheimer's, and we have too much in resources to apply for Medicaid for a while. And I need help to figure out when, how, and where to find a place for him to live, and how long we can pay for it ourselves before having to apply for Medicaid.
Yeah, that's me. And if you don't like me, I'll give you a couple names.
And then another one related to asset preservation. Have you thought about asset preservation that isn't just giving the assets away?
Oh, well, in terms of, that, we're looking at putting money into the home, buying a new car. We are looking at those Medicaid compliant annuities. Those are the main, those are the main avenues we use. There's no other magical asset preservation thing. So people often come to me and they've heard about irrevocable trusts. Irrevocable trusts are not used in the state of Washington.
Oh, that's good to know.
There you go. So everyone who's heard, just put all your money in an irrevocable trust. Don't put your money in an irrevocable. Do not put your money in an irrevocable trust. The state now, no matter how you phrase it, according to the DSHS new revised guidelines of a year and a half ago from the Washington Administrative Code, and the way the Department of Social and Health Services interprets that administrative code, no matter how you phrase it, no matter how you do it, if you put money in an irrevocable trust, it is still considered available to that person.
Wow. So if a spouse is diagnosed, yet still able to take care of him or herself,
yes.
How soon should we look at developing a special trust?
Sorry, I was going to bring that language up. Sorry, repeat that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Lynn. I was looking for the exact language the state uses that I use to scare clients about irrevocable trust, but I'd rather focus on the questions. Sorry.
If a spouse is diagnosed and still able to care for him or herself, how soon should we begin to look at developing a special trust?
There's no right answer. There's in terms of revising your estate plan to make sure that the well spouse, doesn't leave everything in their will just flat out to the ill spouse. No such thing as too early.
So what are typical costs to engage an elder care attorney to plan for Medicare, create a trust, etc.?
That's the $1 million question. No pun intended. Sorry. No pun intended, isn't it? Yeah. But usually my Medicaid, consultations in terms of just sitting down and talking, it's, $200 to block out that time. It can be also, again, it depends on the circumstance. Usually if we're just redrafting a will with a special needs trust and we're drafting a quitclaim deed, transferring the house out of the ill spouse's name, and we're recording it with the county, that usually ends up being $675.34, to give an example.
That's very precise.
The county charges $125.34 to record a deed.
How many elder law attorneys are there in Vancouver, and do they all do the same type of things?
No, there are some attorneys, if you have like a difficult guardianship where there's a serious dispute, over who should be looking after mom, or mom disagrees that she needs a guardianship, I'd be referring you to someone who's, who really is able to focus on those cases. There are some attorneys who I think do a very good job with, elder abuse. Like I don't do elder abuse cases. I don't do vulnerable adult protection orders. Different attorneys are good at different things. I do a lot of the estate planning and administration, but I don't do disputes. Not everyone does Medicaid. Yeah.
Got it.
Generally, knock on wood, most attorneys, I would think, kind of do what they like to do. Because of my mom and dad, I like more helping people than helping people fight other people.
So do you know what Medicaid allows for dementia care? Is there a daily rate?
So when people get into this daily rate stuff, I'd need a little more information in terms of what they mean.
Well, typically,
Tell me, yeah, we're going at.
When somebody is evaluated for a daily rate, it has to do with the amount of care that is needed. So I think that's the question. So
repeat the initial question again. I'm sorry. Let me put it all together here.
Do you know what Medicaid allows for dementia care related to a daily rate?
And there, depending on the facility, there wouldn't be a limit. I'm not aware of anyone being, it depends on what the facility will accept. I mean, if the facility will say however much care you need is what you need, that's something to discuss up front. Trying to figure out the best way to answer that without getting too deep in the daily rate stuff, which I generally find more harmful than helpful. Other than saying,
so one of our placement people has said that daily rate is determined by an assessment that is performed by a DSHS contracted nurse. So in other words, the state decides on the daily rate.
Oh yeah, but what I'm trying to figure out is why that would be a concern for the client. In other words, the daily rate is what it is, but usually that's the facility sorting out what they'll be paid for by the state.
Well, I think, and I don't know that for sure, but I think what the concern is that will the care become so great that they no longer can afford to keep the patient, that the facility will still keep the patient despite the fact that their care has become so great.
If a facility said, we'll accept mom no matter what, and all of a sudden now says, sorry, mom's care is too much, I'd be calling the long-term care ombudsman. If there's a facility that says, we'll accept mom no matter what, and then says, did I say no matter what? I mean, she's getting really expensive. That's not kosher.
So, and typically, another comment from our placement specialist is that typically adult family homes prefer a resident with a higher rate versus a lower rate. Assuming that that's what that question was related to.
I'm sorry. Find a place that accepts your loved one and will take care of your loved one. And if they'll accept whatever that daily rate is, then they'll accept it.
I do know that we have had instances in our groups where people have had to, that the adult family home that is accepted, the individual says, sorry, we can't handle them. You have to take them someplace else. But I don't think that's related to rate.
That's not related to rate. I mean, are we talking about people on Medicaid already? Or just that we'll take care of them, but they're too much?
Yes.
We'll take care of them, but they're too much. I mean, that's what I had with mom and with her assisted living. I thought we could take care of it there, but it was just too much and I had to move her. Usually what I'm recommending is, and sometimes that happens and you have to move them, but talking to a placement advisor, figuring out of where that, how that loved one's trajectory might go. I mean, we all know dementia and Alzheimer's only goes one way. And I know people have been burned with adult family homes. I have a lot of clients who've been happy and successful with them. I think if you go through a placement advisor and are honest and upfront about what you're expecting, I think you'll be okay. I've seen people run into some shady adult family homes. The other one I don't like, and I always tell people watch out for, is an adult family home that says we'll accept mom as a Medicaid patient, but once she's on Medicaid, you still have to pay me $500 a month.
Oh gosh, is that even legal?
No, that's not, but people do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can a child claim any monthly payment for caregiving for a parent with dementia living in their home?
So people do this. You can have a caregiver agreement. If you are accepting money to care for a loved one in the home, do not go fly by night. Do not say, well, this month it was 700 and last month was 450. Draft something up. If your loved one has capacity, have them sign that contract. If they do not have capacity, still draft it up and sign it yourself, and make clear exactly what services you are providing and exactly what your flat monthly rate is. The best way for those contracts to be approved are to have them written in advance. Though worst case scenario, I have had some contracts written up of, hey, just so you know, this confirms that for the last 3 years. But generally, once you're starting those services, you want to draft everything up then, what you're doing, and exactly how much per month you are doing it for.
Are facilities allowed to balance the bill for the amount not covered by Medicare?
And see right there of, no, they can't say, well, we're accepting less than Medicaid, so we're going to need $1,000 a month from you to cover the balance. If a place ever mentions that, call the ombudsman.
Okay. And I think that was Medicaid was what he was referring to.
Yeah, and I wish I had a better answer than contact the ombudsman, but I really find an initial point of contact for something here is not kosher and someone's got to find out what's going on. The long-term care ombudsman for the Southwest Washington Area Agency on Aging is the first phone call.
Perfect. Is there a marriage penalty with Medicaid? You talked about that a little bit.
I have had a situation with a couple clients who were dating that I recommended they get married. There is not a marriage penalty.
There are often questions about whether a couple should get divorced before getting on Medicaid, and I think that you pretty much answered that.
Yeah.
But there are still a lot of people that believe that that's something that they have to do because they're worried about their assets.
Let's figure out another way to plan. Let's see if there's something else we can do.
Can you prepay for assisted living to meet the spend down requirements?
No, unfortunately, you can't, cut a check for $300,000.
What if they get aid and attendance? Does that count as income?
So eventually, yes, that will count as income once you're on Medicaid, but aid and attendance can help us pay for care until we're on Medicaid. Another bad luck, I was looking for aid and attendance for my dad, but he was 6 months outside of the required combat period for the Korean War.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Other than that, it was a great summer.
We have had comments from group members about trying to get aid and attendance and having such a difficult time doing it.
It is so difficult. There is one specific, there's one specific attorney based out of Salem, Oregon, who I recommend for VA aid and attendance help. And I'm not exaggerating when I know she tells clients, be prepared for it to take 6 to 9 months easy.
And we do have an organization here in Vancouver that does help people with aid and attendance.
Yes, I know they do. I also recommend, I don't think it's a bad idea to talk to an attorney about it. But it's not a program where you apply on Monday and you're getting that check Friday.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
it is retro, however.
It's retro. It just, in the meantime, it just takes forever.
It takes forever.
And
sometimes.
If you need help paying for 5 months, what good's that money going to do you if you don't get it for a year?
Yeah, and sometimes that person has expired before it comes through.
Yeah.
So what about the stimulus checks? Is that going to create an issue with Medicaid?
No, not at all. I just deposited my parents' stimulus checks. So I'm waiting for the next ones. Let's go.
What happens if
Only
there's
that,
an inheritance?
there are some people who are under the impression, based on how the state has interpreted it, that you can give that money away. I wouldn't do that.
Really?
I think they're going to revise that, but they're trying to come up with all sorts of ways to make the stimulus check, carve out an exception. I know I was sent, boy, I'd have to look for that email. I was sent, a couple of attorneys discussing something in the spring. The nice thing about that money is, if you need it, hey, yeah, free
Awesome.
money. Keep it coming. Do not try and give that money back. Take it, and then we'll figure out what to do with it.
Would you mind giving us the attorney's name in Salem regarding aid and attendance?
Yes, her name is Rebecca Cooney. How do you spell her last name? Gosh darn it, I'm always saying it, not spelling it. Hold on, Becky, where are you? Kueny. She's based out of Salem.
Thank you.
Yeah. When I was looking at aid attendance for my dad, I called up Rebecca and said, let me know if I can do anything here.
Awesome.
Even me, I was like, I'm gonna call the lawyer I know who can help me with this. I'm not in an emotional place to do this myself.
Besides, it's really, really difficult.
Well, it's more just at that point, I just,
Yeah.
Rebecca,
Yeah.
I'll do a favor for you down the road. Could you help me out?
Yeah. I think that was smart of you.
Yeah, well.
So talking about an inheritance, and you mentioned that a little bit. Can you refuse it if it's not beneficial to the situation?
You have to accept it. So the best thing to do is to write it out is to change that estate plan. Again, I had the client, her mother was 97, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that this woman's mother had as far as I'd seen, the worst, most advanced case of Alzheimer's I'd ever seen. There was absolutely nothing we could do with this money from her brother in Arkansas, but we were obligated to accept it.
And so basically she went off of Medicaid.
Spent the money, and then when she was back under 2,000, she went back on.
Wow. So if you have cemetery plots,
yes,
and they're pre-purchased, does the value of that cause issues?
No, as long as they're pre-purchased and there's no sale cash value. Usually what we're doing is you should be purchasing an irrevocable burial fund. So there's a little bit of a difference between buying a funeral plot, because theoretically you can sell those, and an irrevocable burial fund. Those are two separate things for Medicaid purposes.
So what is the Neptune Society?
As far as I'm aware, it depends on as far as I've seen with Neptune Society, is that a cremation or burial?
Cremation.
Okay, yeah, usually with cremation, those are almost always you've paid, they'll take care of it. There's no to that.
It's pre-purchased. Yeah. How about reverse mortgage? How does that impact a Medicaid application?
So I have used reverse mortgages in quite a few, surprisingly, Medicaid situations. If you take money out from a reverse mortgage and you take out $50,000, I mean, that's available money. A lot of times when a reverse mortgage is a benefit is when we have a single person, like let's say, again, grandma's in the home. She has the home and she has, $3,000 in the bank. We need to find an adult family home for her. We are going to have to cut a check for $6,000 pretty soon. We're not sure what we're going to do with the house when. A reverse mortgage buys you time, for lack of a better term. Sometimes for those really stubborn clients who just, I'm not selling my home. The emotional path of least resistance is let's take out a reverse mortgage and pay for their care and see where we are in 5 months, 6 months, a year. Yeah.
Is there a statute of limitations on Medicaid estate recovery? And could you explain estate recovery a little bit more?
Yeah. There is no statute of limit. I mean, I don't know what someone means by statute of limitations in this scenario. So let's say here's where at most 99.9% of estate recovery is someone was on Medicaid, they still had a home in their name, they passed away, and now the state was going to place a lien on that home. What it means is the state gives you a, for lack of a better term, a running tally of how much you owed. And in order to clear that title to the home and probate, you're going to have to pay the state back first. So let me give you an example. Let's say we still had a home in mom's name. Mom passed away. Home is worth, making up a number, 300 grand. And we have a Medicaid bill the state put a lien on for $50,000. Well, we sell the home, we pay the state their money back, and then we distribute the proceeds. But there is no way to avoid estate recovery on a home when someone passes away if it's still in their name and they had Medicaid benefits.
But if the spouse is in the home.
So if the spouse is in the home, they cannot recover while the spouse is alive, A. And B, if someone's coming to see me and we're doing a Medicaid application, we are taking the ill spouse's name off the title to the home, so it's no longer recoverable.
Got it.
Worst case scenario, again, wife passes away, she was on Medicaid, home was still in her name, husband will not have to pay the state back until he passes away. They're just literally, and the state will wait, they'll wait 20 years, they'll wait 30 years, they'll wait for husband to pass away. Once he's no longer in the home, then estate recovery would begin.
Okay. A comment from someone that the Neptune Society does have revocable contracts.
If it's, I'm telling people, if it's revocable, if you can get your money back, if it's possible to get money out of it, it's an available resource. Pay for something irrevocable.
Got it. As a single person, it's good to know about the reverse mortgage.
Yeah.
Would I need to deed my house to my brother in order for him to use it for my memory care?
So here's the one issue with reverse mortgages is usually the person has to be living in the home. So it buys you time as a single person. Reverse mortgages for Medicaid purposes aren't as helpful as in terms of having to move someone as they would be in other circumstances. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't.
So if you're the power of attorney for your loved one who has dementia, say mom, can you go ahead and get a reverse mortgage on that house?
Yes, and
on her behalf.
Sometimes they'll push back, and that's when people call me and I write a letter explaining why a power of attorney can be used. A lot of title companies, banks, whoever has it, are of the opinion that their opinion of the power of attorney is what goes, and it's not.
Okay.
As I said, I don't do much fighting or arguing. The only nasty letters I write are nasty power of attorney letters. I wouldn't call them nasty, but they're the only heavy letters I write.
Firm ones?
Yeah, let's call it that. Strongly worded letters.
Okay. Well,
But
actually, our
original
time
material-
is now up. You were hugely helpful, and I've got comments thanking you for the presentation and also asking if your slides would be available.
They can be. I emailed them to Julie, right?
Yeah, I've got them.
I have my advanced ones if anybody want to jump in the deep end. My advanced ones, for lack of a better term, are a little more linear because they get a little more in depth. This, as I've said, the Medicaid in the Middle Ages, every time I present it, I think, boy, I'd like to put something else in, or I'm brainstorming a way to make it more digestible because it's a very hard to digest presentation.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
But thanks for allowing us to share the slides, because we will do that.
I wish I could sometimes just, sit in a chair in a circle and say, all right, folks, tell me what you got.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank yous are coming up like crazy. So especially from us, thank you so much, Joshua, for everything you do for Hope.
Lynn, anytime.
All right.
And I will tell you, and I'm gonna get my dad back hooked up to his Thursday group one of these days.
Oh, well, that would be awesome.
I know. I work on him every week. Every Wednesday I try.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay, everyone,
long,
thank
everyone.
you.